Max and Ruby was one of my favorite shows of all time when I was a kid. I had all the DVDs, toys, and several Max and Ruby themed parties. I even went to all the live shows that they did, but like everyone else, I eventually stopped watching Max and Ruby and other kids shows. I moved into my new house and was sitting in my living room watching funny YouTube videos on my brand new laptop. I was laughing when I heard my doorbell ring. When I opened the door, there was nobody there except a package on my doorstep from Nickelodeon. I took the package inside and opened it. Inside was a DVD case that read Max and Ruby Season 8 Early Access, with an image of Max and Ruby on the cover, which looked like it was fan-made, and the background was blank. I opened the case and there were 5 DVDs inside, each labeled Max and Ruby, 1 through 5. I put my headphones on and inserted the first disc into my laptop. The DVD was completely normal. It was bright, colorful, and brought back so many memories of me watching Max and Ruby. I put the second disc in, and it was still normal, but around the third episode was when it started to get a little strange. There was a sound of static and a red filter over it, but I could still hear and see the characters. But when I put the third disc in, that's when things started to get a little bit more creepy. The theme song was sad sounding, and Max and Ruby had sad looks on their faces throughout the intro, and this time, it only had 2 episodes. The first one was called Grandma's Funeral. It showed Grandma lying on the floor and a mysterious figure in the background. It started with Max and Ruby getting dressed in funeral clothing. Ruby was holding a bouquet of flowers, and Max was holding his rubber red elephant toy. Ruby and Max walk out of the front door, and the scene then fades to black. It then showed Max and Ruby, along with other bunnies, at a cemetery. The camera then went over to show Grandma lying in a coffin, with a bullet hole in her chest and head. The camera then went back to Max and Ruby. Max started to cry, and that's when Ruby went over to hug him. Upon calming Max down, Ruby takes him to Grandma's coffin and places the bouquet of flowers and the other things from Season 5, Episode 78, that she had made for her in her arms. That's where the episode ended. The next episode started, and it was called Louise's Moving Day, and it showed Louise holding a box with her stuff in it, looking upset. The camera then went over to Max and Ruby's house, where I started to hear the sound of Ruby crying. Ruby exited her home and hugged Louise tightly. After a tearful goodbye, Louise walks to her parents' car, but stops halfway to look at Ruby. Louise entered her parents' car, and the family drove away. Ruby then ran up to her room, crying, and jumped in her bed with her face on her pillow. She was crying for a minute. On the 4th disc, instead of saying Max and Ruby, the children said, "It's over for you." There was only 1 episode, and it was titled Max's Death. It started with Max sitting on his bed, looking very upset. He just sat there for 2 minutes, and he eventually got up to go check on Ruby. Ruby was looking at a picture of Louise. I noticed that there were a few beer cans in her room. Max then climbed Ruby's bed and started to hug her to make her feel better. Ruby puts down the photograph and starts shoving Max. With each push, Ruby got more and more angrier. By the 10th push, Ruby pushed Max onto the floor, and she got off her bed, screaming at Max. Max then walked back to his room before slamming the door. Max went to the middle of his room and started to bawl for 5 minutes. He went over to his closet and pulled out a knife and then returned to the middle of his room. The scene then faded to white, with the camera showing a black shape of Max stabbing himself, with blood splashes. Ruby then walked into Max's room and was in shock when she saw her little brother lying on the floor with a knife in his throat. She fell to her knees and started to cry for a minute, and then pulled out a revolver and shot herself in the head. The camera panned over to show gore all over the floor. I only had one DVD left to watch. I couldn't imagine what happened next. I then put the fifth one in. All it showed was a static image of Ruby with stitches all over her head, with blood dripping out of them. Ruby then disappeared from the screen, and I heard a noise from the floor creaking. It sounded like it came from my kitchen. So I went to my kitchen to find Max's corpse on my kitchen table. There was also a note next to his body which read, written in red. I looked behind me, only to find Ruby standing there with the same knife that Max had. Before she could kill me, Ruby from Season 5 jumped out of nowhere and started to attack Season 8 Ruby. Season 5 Ruby won by taking the knife where the other Ruby had and stabbed her in the heart. Ruby then turned to me. She then informed me that Max and Ruby Season 8 wasn't made by Nickelodeon, but instead Evilodion. The goal was trying to ruin as many childhoods as possible, but Ruby and Max won't allow that. She then reveals she's part robot and jumps into a portal. I walked into my living room. I decided to Google what Evilodion was. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything on it. It's like Google's trying to hide something from me, but that's a story for another time. I'm just hoping Max and Ruby can save everyone's childhood, including mine.